In this video, we're going to look at the Hobby Boss 1/18 scale Huey kit. We're going to go over the history of the Huey, look at some purchase options, unbox it, look at the kit, go over the assembly, then the paint and decals, and then finally look at the finished model. The Huey helicopter, also known as the Bell UH-1 Iroquois, was developed by Bell Helicopter in the late 1950s for the U.S. military. It was extensively used during the Vietnam War for troop transport, medical evacuation, and close air support, and became an icon of the conflict. The Huey's versatility and reliability made it the backbone of the U.S. military's air operations in Vietnam. Its success spurred the development of modern military and civilian helicopters, and it is still used today for a variety of missions around the world. Most people have seen the Huey in action in movies like Platoon, or most famously in Apocalypse Now. This helicopter was also featured in two important storylines of the G.I. Joe comic. The first being the experiences of Stalker, Snake Eyes, and Storm Shadow in Vietnam. The second being the training mission, in which Snake Eyes is disfigured and almost dies. So for all these reasons, I really wanted to have a Huey in my G.I. Joe collection. So in the early 2000s, the Ultimate Soldier had some amazing Hueys. You could find these at Toys R Us for not that much money, and they're beautiful toys in scale. They come with figures. They're really great. But today, on the aftermarket, they're like $500. So I didn't want a Huey that bad, but I read about this Hobby Boss 1/18 scale model kit that was supposedly made from the molds that Ultimate Soldier used. So, I read some reviews, looked on eBay, and found it for a decent price, around $80 or $90. And so I decided to, roll the dice and see what I'd get. As you can see, the box was pretty beat up. I was a little worried when I got it, but it was a big box. And when I opened it up, I was surprised and happy to find that, nothing was broken. And also the scale of it was really big, looked really sturdy and well made, like a toy, not like a model kit. The detail was kind of low, but I really didn't care because, again, I kind of wanted it to fit in with my G.I. Joe toys. Didn't want like a super detailed, like delicate scale model. I also noticed there were screws to help put it together, which, seemed to me an indicator like, I've never gotten a model kit that came with screws. This was probably a toy. You can see the bag of screws there. And putting a G.I. Joe figure up next to it, it looked like, the perfect scale. So I was very excited by what I saw. I didn't really know what I was going to get, but this had me really excited to, take the model apart, get some paint on it, get it together, and, put it on the battlefield with the other vehicles I had. The first thing I decided to do was to get some paint on it, just some base colors, kind of breaking down the pieces, thinking like what's going to be green, what's going to be interior, so kind of like a bluish gray, and then, what I wanted to have is black and what would want to be kind of metallic. And I thought this would just like make it way easier for when I assembled it. And I was really glad that I did do this. It saved a lot of time, and I didn't have to worry about, like not being able to get paint into certain areas. Here I'm putting together the cockpit, with Wild Bill, and the scale and the fit looks really good. Again, you can see it's not like super delicate little detailed parts, but it feels really good with the G.I. Joe figures. The glass that came with it looked good, like nice and clear. And here it is next to some other vehicles like the Tomahawk. So you can get a sense of the scale. It's true 1/18 scale, unlike the Joe vehicle. So it'll look kind of bigger than you would expect it to look next to some of that stuff. Some of the glass, like the top panels, didn't come tinted with the green like you'd expect on a Huey. So I decided to paint it. I tried using a brush at first, but it just, you could see the brush strokes. So I ended up breaking out the airbrush and, just using a nice Tamiya kind of clear coat color. And, that worked out really nice. The airbrush laid it down nice and smoothly. And then I got that kind of desired effect of like the light coming through the top and giving it that kind of green tint. It also allowed me to color kind of like the different marker lights, the warning lights on the different sides of the vehicle. It went together pretty well. You can see it's like, again, not super complicated. And once I got those like colored lights in there, the colored glass, it really added to the, to the realism, and it started coming together. Also, again, I was really glad that I pre-painted this stuff because they're like with the dark cockpit elements and, the interior being sprayed. I just didn't have to worry about, getting in there with the airbrush. And so, it's just starting to look pretty good with Wild Bill there, even though it's just like base colors, I was actually thinking like, hey, maybe I'm done. Maybe I don't want to do any more work on this. But we want this to look good. So I masked it off, got ready for paint. I did have to do some sanding around the rotor, where that went in. to get it to run a little bit smoother. But that wasn't too bad. And then, yeah, I've got it masked off, I think, for the black. Up front, there's some black areas. And then, there's the red on the back. I don't know what it is, like a little wing kind of part. And then the tips of the propellers, give them a little bit of color and some yellow. And, you can see it starts to pop. It starts to, starts to look like a true vehicle. And then next came the decals. So, I watched a couple of YouTube videos, just, some like details of how to do decals in a good way. And so, just making sure the surface is wet where you're going to apply the decal, and then making sure that you soak the decal itself for a while, so that it really pulls away from that paper. And then, I'll use like an X-Acto knife to kind of like really grab the edge of it, or just the tip of my finger, and, just slide it into place. And having the water on it already lets you kind of move it around so the decal, unlike a sticker, isn't stuck in place until you kind of like dab a little bit of the water away. And then it's, it's kind of stuck down and dries in place and, looks good. So it's just a matter of going around and doing that. The shark tooth on the front was a real pain in the butt because there were a lot of like little tiny pieces for that. But, it came out great and it looks really nice. Interestingly enough, the toy that you get in Toys R Us, that was spray painted on. And if you look, it's like not as clean. It must have been some kind of mask. But, I would have paid to have someone do that part for me. With the UH-1 all done, it was time to break out Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, and Stalker, my Vietnam versions of those guys. And you'll notice I had to make a cool custom gun for Stalker to match that awesome M16 with the big silencer and the Starlight scope. And so here it is with the figures all painted up with the decals. I couldn't take it outside, it's too cold out. But I even got some Vietnam soldiers to look like they're attacking the helicopter, or attacking Snake and Storm Shadow and Stalker while they're out on patrol and they're trying to get back in the Huey. It looks like that RPG is about to take out the Huey, but man, what a great kit. It was pretty easy to put together. It's really sturdy, so it's like I don't have to worry about, kind of moving it around or swooshing it around, or, throwing a bunch of figures in there or tying some ropes to it and, having guys rappel off it or anything like that. It's definitely a toy-worthy kind of thing, not a delicate kit. But I think the detail's nice. It's, a little more detailed maybe than a G.I. Joe vehicle, but, not too crazy. And so it wasn't too crazy to put together. I did kind of mess up the one door there. If you look, I got the glue too close to the glass. So if you do something like this, be careful of that because it'll fog up the glass. And then I tried to use a heat gun because I read that would like get rid of the fog, but it ended up kind of bending part of the door. So I'm just like, it's good. It's fine. I'll just leave it like that. But just something to be cautious of. But man, if you're looking for a Huey, this is definitely a great option. And what's nice is you can customize it yourself. Yeah, and just being able to remake this scene, with Stalker, Storm Shadow, and Snake Eyes, like back in Vietnam. To me, reading that comic, reading the Nam comic back then, it just felt like this to me was the origins of G.I. Joe, that all these guys came back from Vietnam and they formed this, anti-Cobra group. And so, I just love being able to play around and set this up. So glad that I ended up getting this kit. It was pretty cool. Well, that should wrap things up for this video. Thanks for stopping by and checking it out. We hope you enjoyed it, that you got something out of it, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Yo, Joe.